Ready? We are. Do I call you a cast? An ensemble? How do we describe this? Because you all have different functions. It's not like you're actors and actresses.
Right.
So the group. I hate using the millennial squad thing. So I want something kind of colorful and different. What do we call you guys? Team?
Crew?
Team. Yeah.
All right.
Team.
Team. That works. We're here with the team for Glad You Asked. Now, this is a Vox property in association with YouTube, and I got to watch a few episodes, which we'll get into in a second. And I just got to say off the top here, the not just the concept you're doing, but the feel of the show. It's one of those shows where if you're up super late at night and you just flip onto channels that you don't usually go to, and you're watching like How It's Made or Mythbusters or something that's running on a marathon on one of those channels. I was watching these episodes like, I could watch this whole series at 1 o'clock in the morning, sitting there doing nothing. I go, yeah, I'm not really going to go out. I'm just going to sit there and binge. Oh, look, there's 4 hours of this. I'm going to watch that show. So it's sort of, it's educational, it's entertaining, but it's also like comfort food. Is that a good compliment for
Oh my
the
God.
show?
I think so.
How It's Made, Mythbusters, those are some of my favorite shows of all time.
Okay.
Great comparisons.
So here's what we're doing. You're doing this concept of is it people submitting questions, or are you just thinking of ideas and go, let's go with that and see why this is so?
So it's kind of a combination. At first, we were thinking that we would get people to source the questions, but we discovered that
The audience is horrible.
yeah.
They're
No.
terrible.
The audience is fine.
Never
but,
go to the audience. That's why the Tonight Show and other shows, they vet them and they find the really good ones, because it's not just luck that this lady visiting from Iowa has a killer question that wow, the Roots had the music set up for it. If you just go randomly, people don't know or they can't express themselves. And then sometimes they're like, these two things don't even go together. I don't know what they're asking.
So fortunately for us, we have like the best vetting tool ever, which is just the YouTube metrics and the database of all the searches that have been done on YouTube.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we're sourcing a lot of this. Is like, what are the most popular things that people are searching for that they really want to know the answers to? And that's kind of where we got started.
All right, so you're going but you guys have to have like a your own personal list of stuff. Like, all right, here's some of the things. These are the hot topics that'll get us trending, get us noticed. But by the second season, I'm going to slip this in there because I really want to know about the Bermuda Triangle. I know it's been done to death, but I kind of want to slip this in there and give it a new perspective. So you have some of these things that are just, I guess, eye candy, if you will, based on the algorithm and such. But you're going to go and you go do a deep dive. One of the episodes I saw was crying. And I watched this episode, and then articles started popping up. And I watched your episode first before I saw these articles popping up there. I go, wait a minute, is everyone into this whole, trying to figure out this whole crying thing now? But the way you did it wasn't just like, oh, what makes you emotional to what you cry, because that's where you start. But then you go, like, I never thought about the muscles. It's really just like kind of strangling your eye sockets there and forcing the liquid out. Not just like this is something you do. It's like wringing a sponge.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's a topic that I've been interested in a long time. So that's one of the ones that I actually had suggested that might be good for this show, and YouTube agreed. And I've been fascinated by crying for a long time because it's really a bizarre thing that happens to us when we're feeling strong emotions. And I hadn't seen any explanation of how that might have come about. And this hypothesis is that, it became linked to our emotions because the muscles around the eye actually squeeze out fluid from tear ducts that were there not to express emotion, but to keep the eye clean. Something we have in common with a lot of other animals, but this sort of emotional crying is unique to our species.
Yeah, it's fluid to keep your eyes lubricated. It's like like when you use saline for your contact lenses or Visine to flush out your eyes, to keep your eyes lubricated. But some actresses or actors can cry on command because they're tricking their muscle memory into doing so. Most people cannot do that. But if you got something thrown at your head or kicked in the leg or something, your first instinct is to, one, cover the area that's feeling the pain, and then two, it's squeezing your head just to start crying, which, now that I'm thinking about it, is rather bizarre. Crying is something everybody does, so you don't think of it being unusual
Right.
until you go deep.
That might make it seem as unusual as it really is to imagine if instead of connecting to our tear ducts, if our emotions were connected to our salivary glands. Like, it could have easily gone that way.
He got shot. Is he crying? No, he's
like-
drooling.
It's like feeling strong feelings, like just watching movies. We'd have like buckets at the movie theater.
Like
but
tear
no,
buckets under
tear
our
buckets.
neck.
Like a cute dog would do when he gets
Right.
excited at the park. He got a ball, and now it's just it's a beard of spit.
Right.
Would have like Gucci bibs on all the time. It'd be hot swag.
Yeah, but it was our eyes. There's probably a reason it was there's lots of reasons why it's our eyes. Our eyes are a big center of communication as is. So if they're early on in human evolution, if there was something happening there, it would have been very noticeable because we use eye contact as a species. A lot of other primates do as well, to communicate what's happening.
And unlock your phone. Nowadays, it's just like, look at the thing. It knows it's you, and
That's true.
which is convenient, lazy, but convenient, and also terrifying because I've seen tests that they've done online where they just put a photo up and it recognized the photo. So, yep, it's your phone. And now whoever stole your phone has a photo of you, now has access to your Apple Pay or worse, whatever you're keeping on your phone there. So you go through this whole algorithm thing. You mark down all the hot topics that you want to do. Now, this first season, if you want to call it, is 10 episodes, and it's split up in little half seasons as you're releasing. So you got 10 topics here. Going through all that, you probably have a lot more on this list, and you look at that and you go, we could do at least 5 seasons of this thing just based on that alone. What are the things that you want to do outside of the popular topics? What are the sort of like on your list here, your wish list that you could dive into?
That's a good question.
I think a few that we didn't touch on were animals. We all love animals. Would like to do an animal story. Drugs, like anything relating to, I don't know, drug wars, drug culture, marijuana, and where that would take us. And infrastructure stories are really big, but we had a lot of ideas.
Totally.
Yeah, I feel like in general we're realizing that like stories around science and technology or just anything that gets us like out of the office work really, really well for this. Because I think
Let's
with a
explore
lot
the
of
hidden
our,
menu on In-N-Out. Let's
Yeah,
get us
yeah.
out of the office. Let's
I
do a
would love
show
to do
on
that
that.
story.
We can write it off.
But yeah, I guess compared to our traditional explainers, which we can often do like from our computer, things that get us out into the real world.
You said science. Do you find it fascinating that people love watching scientific programming, but we're not fans of actually doing it or learning it in school? Like I happen to be one that I did enjoy actually learning it, but like I said earlier, late night, if you got one of the Discovery channels on, there's like 6 of them, and they got astronomy programming going on. Like, I'm going to watch these satellites go and check out the moons of Saturn. And, yeah, I think I'm kind of watching that instead of a rerun of something. But it's amazing that those shows, because they're always on, because people are watching them. And when you talk to some people and they're like, oh, yeah, did you see the one about the whole oxygen cycle with the rainforest down in South America? One times out, yeah, people did. But when you're in school, no one gave a shit about this stuff. But now that you're older, like, now TV is going to teach me how to do all of this.
Some of the best compliments that we get at Vox are from teachers who say that they're using our videos in their classrooms or as homework or as sort of extra information that you can watch if you're particularly interested in a topic that they're learning about in class. And I always love those. I think that reflects that that we're doing a good job, but also that the teachers are really interested in figuring out what their students want to engage with and how they want to learn, and how the things that they're learning in a class relate to other things out in the world. So those are my favorite comments I get.
I also think that
generally
it kind of reflects that in the classroom, teachers' tools are really limited. Where the medium of video is really well suited to explaining topics visually. And teachers have, they've got like their textbooks and maybe they can have you do an experiment, but we're able to bring in all sorts of editing tricks, animation, music, lots of ways to engage people that in ways that teachers can't necessarily do in the classroom. And I think those tools are really well suited to scientific topics.
I think I kind of got gypped growing up in the time period that I did, because we had those big wheel structures with a VCR and like a really clunky television that you
And
hooked
the
in.
tape.
It's got the like the bungee cords on it so it doesn't tip over, so it's top heavy. And they're throwing in, like Princess Bride because it's a rainy day and she doesn't want to teach English that day or something like that. But now with the way technology is, you got a digital projector right onto the screen. You can pull up anything, YouTube, you guys, anything on there, and said, you know what, we just did this chapter. Here's a video that's going to go a little bit more in depth there. It's a great time for being young and trying to learn about these things. Like I tell you, I'm watching it late at night, and I was like, if these were on when I was a kid, I probably would have cared a lot more than I did watching these things. So yeah, you're definitely right. Just so they teach something and they go, okay, now we're going to watch this for your episode's only like what, half an hour, 20 something minutes in there.
20 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not that long. It's not killing the entire time period that you have for the course, and kids aren't going to be laying down and going to sleep. Watching it like I did because I didn't care about some of these old movies that they were showing. It's like, oh, right, Romeo and Juliet was poorly acted. I just read the book and I wasn't too big of a fan either. But now I'm watching one of your other episodes where you were simulating what it would be like to terraform Mars,
Yeah.
where you guys got stuck out in Utah.
Yeah, we did.
I didn't even think about that. Like, because I knew about the Biodome 2 thing growing up when it was announced that this was happening, and they were everyone was all excited, the world was looking at it, and then they started having all these problems because they miscalculated things. Somebody cut their hand, got hurt. They were having problems as far as I guess, recycling the garbage and the waste that was going on. So all these problems, which they needed to have there, because if they had set this over there and started at that, everyone's screwed. But you going through the Biodome, then going out into Utah, showing what the terrain would look like was pretty interesting. Because the fact that you got stuck actually took your story a totally different direction.
It did. I think that reflects that a lot of the time we do so much of reporting and research before we ever go out into the field. But when we actually do go out into the field, especially in the format of this show, we get to have moments like that. We get to get stuck in the middle of a Paleolake basin in Utah with a scientist who is studying extremophiles, which are very microbial life that are, generally speaking, living in extreme environments. And the scientist there was studying how those microbes can teach us things that we would need to know in order to survive on Mars. Because there's some analogies to the Martian environment in this basin in Utah. But just being in that environment, having something unexpected happen, and just sort of watching it play out, to your point, lends a totally different tone to the episode. I think for all of us, we got to go out into the field and have experiences like that were unexpected and helped the explanation somewhat in the sense that they kept people really engaged, kept people feeling like it was a journey in order to discover something new.
I think after that happened to Cleo, we were all like,
I want to get stuck.
yeah, what can possibly go wrong with our episodes that'll just like make this better?
I am
'Cause that
not
was so
doing the
good.
hot air balloon episode. Sorry, it's not happening. Also, the way you're shooting it too. I mean, obviously, this is educational, informational, so it's really trying to appeal to everybody. But the fact that you got stuck and then you just hopped out with the camera and you go, okay, we're stuck. Then we're going to be a while, and then you just start. It's very millennial style doing that.
YouTube.
So when you go out there and you're doing this and like they're kind of stuck right now, but I'm going to tell you about these things as you're walking away from it. One, I'm laughing at it, but two, the fact that you're shooting it in that way gets younger people more involved into seeing this stuff, which again, younger people might see some science and go, oh, this is boring. I want to play Fortnite. But you're appealing and showing it in a way that they're accustomed to and how it appeals to them. So that's a great thing that you guys are doing with this.
Yeah, I hope so. I think that we are able to be that younger voice in the episodes as a proxy for the audience. And then the people that we interview are, leading experts in their fields. So, for example, Kendall Lynch, who was the scientist doing research out in Utah, she's the one who's describing, how perchlorate is a toxin that we're going to have to figure out how to live with and get out of the water if we want to survive on Mars. And she has been doing groundbreaking research in that for years. So I get to be the one that sort of has the vlog camera and I'm following her around and I'm explaining little bits of the story. And in doing that, I get to feature her and her work and the sort of level of complexity that she brings to the episode.
How difficult is it coordinating all of this? When you get your topic, you go, okay, these are the people that are assigned to this topic, and then these are the people who are going to film, edit, what have you. Now you got to get experts. Now you got to get like scientists, you say, or engineers. All this. How difficult is it to coordinate all this stuff just to get one episode done?
It's a lot. I mean, the other thing is that we're all in every episode in one way or another, right?
I think so, yeah.
Which is just like, while we're working on our own pieces, it's like, oh, I need you in this room so I can tell you about how the internet works, which is an episode that Cleo's working on. And so that adds another layer of scheduling. And it's something that took us a while to figure out. And I'm not totally sure we've got it down yet, but it's just kind of like more of a puzzle piece than any other format that I've ever seen before, because I don't think that any show that looks like this exists in the world. And the ones that are already existing, whether it's a doc format or if it's a new TV news format or even like the explainer format that Vox is known for, it's like, oh, we can see how that's done and we can replicate that. But this, it's like, doesn't exist, so we had to make it up, and it's been kind of rocky, but it's fun.
All right, so this is sort of a two-part question coming from the same thing. So you have topics that you're going to do. What topics do you have where you go, we can't get this done, or we can't get this approved to get this done?
I think that they wanted to tackle like big curiosity questions in this series, as opposed to more current,
cliche ones,
as opposed to like what's going on with impeachment right now, which is something Vox would do an explainer for our channel.
Right.
But for this show, we're looking at things that are sort of questions that people never stop asking. They're not confined to any particular moment. They're not about any particular politics in any particular country. So I think that was one sort of guiding thing for choosing the stories.
What was was there anything maybe budget-wise or just logistical that like this is not going to happen, but maybe you come back and revisit it at a different time and see if you can get this done? Is there anything like that?
I would say that one major constraint that is also very liberating when you're making a story like this is we have to have something to show. So if it's not a primarily visual story, then it's not a good story, both generally speaking for video and for Vox Video in particular, but also in this series where we're doing so much field work, where we're leaning not on After Effects and animation, but rather on physical things that we can demonstrate or play with. It means that if we can't figure out what the visuals are for that sort of physical experience, then we don't want to do the story, because could be an amazing story, but it's not a good video for this series. I think we had some ideas. I'm having trouble thinking of what those examples are, but we definitely had moments like that where we were like, amazing topic, would be a great article, not for this show.
Yeah, I do think that we also push back the other way as well. So every now and then one of the topics that we're working on just seems like we're not going to figure out a way to go anywhere or to show this. And we just kind of work with the question and adjust it to make sure that we can answer it. So a good example is What Happens When We Die, which was an episode that I worked on, brought everybody into it. But there were so many ways that question could be, one, perceived, and then two, like where we would go for that at the end of the day. And we just had to adjust the question to like, what are you going to experience in the moments closest to death? So from that, we were able to find...
That's difficult because not everybody dies the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not like you just go to sleep and then this happens, so it's universal. There's a lot of horrific stuff out there, and there's a lot of natural stuff out there. So it's really hard to pinpoint an idea of how you're turning the power off.
Right. So we had to think about like what are the things that the audience would be most interested in seeing here. So we had a viewer who submitted that question. We answered her kind of question on it. And then we also looked into near-death experiences and the science behind what's happening in your brain. So just found particular deep dives into like what these different sections were.
A lot of the things popping up having to do with ghosts, supernatural, those kind of things, because there's a lot of those shows that you look at them and go, one, this is poorly shot, and two, I think he threw a bottle against the wall and said, oh my God, something threw that, and then they ran out and then never explained what happened. But imagine if you're going through popular subjects, you got to get stuff like Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, hauntings, Slender Man, things like that you have to do you tackle that and go, oh, that's too cliche, or that's just too ridiculous, that's not really...
I mean, was that not part of like an early idea of the show, is to like break down controversies or
Misconceptions.
conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
That's a good way to do it.
Misconceptions.
It's hard though, because there's
it's
some
like-
things that don't really lend themselves to empirical testing. So there's not actually much we can say besides there's no evidence for this. And then where do you go from there, you know? But I think near-death experiences in Alex's episode about death is probably the closest we got to looking at something that has, it's usually associated with a lot of spiritual and religious meaning. But Alex looked at it from the more scientific point of view because there is a lot of research into these experiences that are fairly common that people have. And the question is, what is generating that subjective experience in their brain?
That said, season 2, UFOs, could definitely be a great story. I bet there's tons of data out there on like what they actually are.
UFOs, you can link in, buy some cheap footage from storming Area 51. That somehow turned into a
Yeah,
concert.
the Naruto runners.
It's like, well, it started here, and now it's a small concert just outside of Vegas, and you were out there in Utah. You could do some more desert stuff, and then Running Man.
I have been to a desert for every single one of my episodes, including how the internet works. So I think for my future episodes, I have to continue to go to the desert.
You ever feel that they don't like you? That's why they keep sending you to the desert.
I
Like,
know,
why am
I
I the
know.
one that has to keep going out
I
there?
keep proposing
Christophe went to
it.
Hawaii.
Oh, that was the
I did relatively a little bit nicer.
A little bit nicer.
Yeah.
All right, next season you got to switch it around. Let her go over the volcanoes in a helicopter and explain something, and then you go to Antarctica
Yeah.
and say, look, there's no aliens in the ice. But there is plants somewhere, we just can't get to them.
Yeah.
We talked about stuff that you didn't get a chance to do or what you would like to do. Let's talk about some of the stuff that's actually done in this season here, because you got 10 episodes. The first 5 are debuting weekly, with the first one that's out right now, and then that goes for 5 weeks each episode, and then restarting again in January 8th, on January 8th for episodes 6 through 10. So in these 10 episodes here, what are we looking forward to? What do we have that you guys have put together for everyone?
Cleo and I are working on an episode right now about online beauty culture. So I don't know how much you watch beauty YouTube, but there's a giant community of
Yes,
girls and women who teach other girls and women how to use makeup. You can see similar things on Instagram and other social media networks. And the question we're asking is whether it is harming us or not.
Also, I've seen several of these things, and I used to think, I'm like, they're just trying to get free product. Like they're honing their skills, and maybe they are showing people how to actually do these things. But I see the way that their videos have progressed over time, and I go, they're just doing sponsorships, and then that all of a sudden they're doing I saw something called the naked palette or whatever for facial stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's convenient. I mean, they had a lot of people, but now this is tied in. Now it just seems to be they're only using these products for all of that stuff. So there's obviously everything comes down to money in one aspect, but yeah, I guess the other aspect is it doing more harm than good? Because Instagram selfies and filters and all the stuff, everyone has to show like they're living an amazing life, but it's one of the best times in the history of humanity. Technology is great, everything's convenient, and everyone's fucking miserable. And I don't get it. It's like
That
people
has a
need
lot to do with the episode that Alex and I were working
Yeah,
on.
it
We
ties
just
in.
started an episode about loneliness. You know, everybody always... I feel like you see a lot of talk right now about this idea that we're in the middle of a loneliness epidemic, that social media and technology and screen time just like is changing our brains and like affecting our emotions such that we feel alone all the time, despite being in the most interconnected era ever. But what's been interesting to see with that is that this whole idea of a loneliness epidemic has been a term that we've used forever. Right.
Yeah, as far back as the 70s, like we found archival papers saying, hey, the kids today are way too lonely. They're doing
On the
crazy
radio.
things. There's a loneliness epidemic. But the fact is, this is just a part of human life. It's almost a natural extension of our bodily functions where being lonely has a purpose, and we're just now starting to talk about it in a real way.
And also just like the idea of blaming it on the current technology of the moment has been a thing since before the smartphone. Like,
Well, I'll tell you this. So, it just happened a few days ago. A friend of mine, his phone had an Android phone, started glitching. It would turn on and off on its own, and then he had to run it in safe mode just to get text messages, couldn't use anything, and then finally it just died. So he has the insurance plan, and they were supposed to send the phone overnight. It didn't happen. He had to wait about 3-4 days for the thing to arrive. So I guess going old school, Facebook Messenger, if you can call it that now. I wrote to him, any update? Did you get your phone, everything? He said, yeah, it's been 3 days. And he said the same thing. He's like, it's kind of lonely. I don't have my phone. But he's walking around the city, going to work, doing all the stuff there. He's not talking to anybody. He's on the train. He's not listening to anything or watching anything. And he said, yeah, it's kind of lonely. I go, I kind of enjoy once in a while. This is another thing, too. Everyone now says, oh, I get off my phone. It's so great, so great. But the second they can get back on the phone, they're back on their phone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something people say now rather than an actual lifestyle change, an achievement to, or reward even at this point to not use this stuff. And he's just still functioning, but it's going back to a time where we're old enough, or at least I am, I don't know about you guys, but where I didn't have the phone growing up, so I knew what that life was like compared to now. When you have younger people, nieces and nephews, they don't have their iPad, they don't have their phone working, whatever. They forgot to bring their charger, and they start to have a meltdown. It's like,
When you think about it, like the cell phone, the smartphone, what was that, like 2007, 2008?
yeah,
Are you?
middle of the 2000s.
Were we really that much happier in 2006? I don't think so. So,
Well, 2 years later, we had a housing and a bank recession hit us.
right,
And
so maybe we were.
But you look, Candy Crush came around, and I'm playing that, and I forgot all my financial problems.
That's funny.
Any other episodes that you want to highlight for the first season before we go?
I did this one on meme culture, which was really interesting.
that's
We
good.
were initially responding to an audience question who, the question asker really just wanted to know what meme culture was and like where it came from, which was a very tough question to approach, especially, for, I don't know, it's such a niche thing that like when you're in it, you get it. And when you're outside of it, it's hard to know, like, where do you start the explanation? But, I mean, it led to a lot of great moments. There was this one day that we spent with a couple meme makers who have this office in Midtown where they just make memes for a living and basically, like, sell them as advertisements. And it was fascinating to just see them make things in real time in front of us, especially pages that I had been following for a long time. To just be able to see that behind the scenes process was really interesting.
Besides seeing it being made, was there anything, I don't know if this is kind of spoilerish or not, but was there anything that you were surprised to discover in the world of meme? Because I want to throw something at you in a second, but I just want to hear, was there anything that you, when you were exploring this, was there anything that kind of surprised you as to why this is a big thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most surprising things for me was seeing how often memes are referred to as sort of like the vectors of propaganda within a lot of political science research, because they are kind of small units of visual information that's like decontextualized and not fact-checked and like not linked to anything else. They just kind of exist on their own. A lot of the formats that have become kind of internet classics are now such a popular way of spreading misinformation. If you want to spread an idea on the internet, there's almost no better way to do it than with a popular meme format.
Right.
And kind of understanding the power that has politically is really interesting.
All right, because I want to ask you this. So with meme stuff, one, I'm tired of seeing people eating popcorn and drinking tea as the answer to every question or something that's posed.
You mean like the Michael Jackson gif?
Like there's that. There's from Thriller. There's the Thriller clip where he's eating the popcorn. And then there's other ones where the guys are
Kermit.
bouncing up and down. The popcorn's going everywhere.
Yeah.
Kermit's drinking the tea. Other people are drinking tea, and it's the same. Or the Michael C. Hall, Dexter's eyes, where he goes like that. That one shows up for answers for everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where communication has gone, where you were talking to people, you would broadcast to people in traditional means, television on air. Then you had the internet, so now you're sending communication that way, and then it becomes more of a text base on your phone, texting. Then we come back to a visual way of communicating now with memes, Photoshop, things like that. But it's anything to get away from actual one, human connection, human interaction. Two, now it's even limiting actual written language. We're sending visuals. It's almost the same thing when they shot Voyager into space. There's visuals engraved on gold plaques and stuff showing the idea of what humanity is and what is on Earth. It's like hieroglyphics because they didn't have a language, but then the visuals became a language. we're progressing and regressing at the same time. And it's really weird because people will have whole conversations with emojis and memes and animated GIFs. And you look at it and I go, I shouldn't know what this conversation is. But now I know perfectly what they're saying.
Yeah.
You could have just wrote one sentence and saved all the time, except everything's moving around now and it's visually stimulating.
Yeah, and I think all of that makes it hard to say whether it's explicitly good or bad for communication, because those GIFs and memes and reactions and emojis are all kind of like a proxy for what we would be doing with body language or our eyes or our faces in any other case. So, yes, we could have said all of that in a sentence, but in a lot of ways we couldn't have. And we couldn't have done it in such a way that, like, plays off of our common base of cultural understanding and, like, references to things that we know and love. So I think it's making how we communicate different. It's not, regressive.
Yeah, it's too early to see where it's going to go.
Sure.
But I don't, with anything new that comes out and I get excited about, I always think, like, what's the downside to it?
Yeah.
Because now you have to. Because it's like I don't have to leave on a Friday night. I can watch any movie that's maybe not in the theater, and sometimes in the theater. I can watch on any streaming service, any TV show that I used to remember.
Yeah.
I don't need to go to the supermarket to get food because you can order from the supermarket and they'll deliver it to me. I can order food, it'll be delivered to me. I can order medicine and toiletries, all delivered. I never need to leave the house. These are great things where, growing up in the 80s, I was like, wow, I wish you could do that. Now you could do that, but people then, with too much convenient, it's like the dumb Spider-Man thing with the responsibility stuff, but too much stuff comes in here and then you go, okay, I don't need to do anything anymore. And there's no sense of drive to live. It's like I'll just
really-
function
yeah,
here.
no,
Everything
totally.
will come to me, and they'll send signals out. It'll come to me, and that's it. I'm right here in a hub, and I never have to interact with the world again if I don't want to.
Yeah.
I definitely find that I struggle to think of good ways of using words now when I use GIFs a lot. And on the one hand, like, if I were to send you, like, Christophe, I eagerly await seeing what happens with this, like, that's a lamer experience than if I send the popcorn GIF, which has some humor to it, at least some life. But on the other hand, like, I don't think that I'm thinking of how to use language creatively anymore because emojis are right there for you to use.
Yeah.
It's also fascinating how they blend in real life. Like when my coworkers and I reference Kombucha Girl. Do y'all know this? The video of the woman
She
tasting
tastes it, and
kombucha,
she's like,
and she's like,
Is this the blonde girl from Texas? Or is this
Maybe.
No, that's
definitely
the girl
blonde.
that says no.
okay?
that one?
Because I had a fight with her the other day.
Oh,
Her
wait.
name's Brittany something. She's a kombucha thing,
It
and
might be her.
Yeah, Brittany.
it is her.
That's her.
Wait, you had a fight with her?
I had a fight with her online.
About what?
She posted something about this photo of her, and I know it was tongue in cheek, but it comes off the wrong way, and that's, I think, something people tend to forget. Where if you guys are all face to face with me, if I say something in a certain cadence or the way I'm putting it, it could be interpreted as a joke or kind of. But if you look at a text, it looks like it's a blatant insult to somebody, and there was a thing out there that she put about she's being. It was something along the lines of this is need to remind you all that this is what the 1% looks like, and I go like, that is hard. I mean, I know what she's going for. I know she's trying to get interaction and stuff, but when you look at it in text, and if you're not really paying attention to it, I felt how offensive it got and how insulted one could be about that. And I made a comment. I go, Who is this? Like, have you looked at all her stuff here? How is she claiming that she's the 1% and she's talking down to all these people? And our audience and other internet people picked up on it, and then it went tagged to her. She didn't respond when I did it, but because everyone else started to, then she had to step in. She's like, who are you? I'm like, come on the show. Let's talk about this. Then she quickly shut up, and I never heard from her again. But yeah, the kombucha girl, because I forgot that little brown soda thing, that's pretty much her whole thing. And I was just like, I didn't understand why she was insulting people, and it turned into this weird nonsense, and I just let it go. I was like, come on, let's talk about it. Let's try to hash this out. And I guess she wasn't interested, which is fine. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just weird that the paths crossed like that. I derailed from what you were saying.
Yeah, no.
No, I think the point there is kind of like, in many senses, we fear technology and like new changes in social a lot, but I do think there's some truth to that communication is a dying art, and we should cherish it while we still can. And maybe if you would have just responded with a funny gif of a
Yeah.
man stroking his chin, it could
Something
have been
like
all
that.
okay.
Oh, also, I said she overreacted to Ariana Grande liking one of her posts because she put a video of her having a meltdown on a couch crying. And I said, this is too much. I said, this is...
I'd probably have a meltdown on my couch if I ever liked something of mine. Yeah, I would cry.
What is so great about Ariana Grande?
Whoa, what?
I'm sorry, but she is not a good role model.
Have you listened to her music?
She's got this song that's basically like, I'm so rich. Look at me. Aren't I
Not
great?
successful?
Have you listened to any other pop song ever? It's all, that's like the major
like the
thrust of
ethos of
most
music
music.
to
I don't know. I feel like we can do better, guys.
The rich stuff came out of the hip hop culture. That wasn't always pop. Pop was kind of plastic
music
and stuff.
also focuses on like
Country tells
Material.
stories.
That country is like, I
Sometimes.
lost all my money.
Lost my mind.
Like,
Yeah, there were those
was
are
sad.
no,
Yeah.
sometimes it's like I have this dope tractor,
yeah.
or like
I
I
think
have
that-
this like
I
amazing
think that's
car.
when that's pop country, where regular country doesn't like. It's weird though how everything breaks down by micro genres.
Maybe we need to have
Regular
an
country
episode
doesn't like
on-
pop
on
country and
themes and music.
Yeah,
I
I
just think
get
fan culture in general is pretty weird.
I get real offended when pop artists take from other genres that they're not ingrained in, specifically hip hop. But
It
yeah.
seems like a area where we all have a lot of
Yeah,
opinions.
but we should probably have
Yeah.
an
Here's
episode.
here's your next
maybe
meeting.
so.
Cultural appropriation.
There we
Explained.
go. If they'll let us do it, I'm down.
Yeah. Ariana's got a lot of that going on.
This has been a
She's got a
production
whole
for them.
lot. Yeah.
And her brother's annoying too.
And she
Seen him
licks
at many
donuts.
events, and
I love Ariana
he
Grande.
cashes in that card.
With any of this. I will-
She's great. I love her.
Yeah,
She's just
Christophe and I in
problematic
this corner. What? No.
in in some respects.
I don't know.
Well, there you go. Topic for you to go out on there. So something maybe for season 2 or season 3. Look for the first episode is out now and then debuting weekly on the Vox YouTube channel. So it's youtube.com/Vox for the first 5 episodes. Then coming back in the beginning of 2020 for the last 4 episodes for season 1 there. When do you, it's really shooting out, but when do you think season 2? Is that something like by the summer? I mean, it's not going to be a full year away, I don't think, right?
I think we have no idea.
We have no
We
idea.
have yet to hear about a season 2.
We also look forward to
Yeah.
learning.
It depends on how many people go and watch that today. So hopefully,
Oh,
get some thumbs.
Go there now. Click the thumbs up. Maybe hit the bell thing to notify you when the new episodes, not just for this particular series, but all the Vox stuff comes up there because they do put out really interesting pieces. If you like this series, you go a little deeper into the channel and see everything else that they put out there. Guys, thank you so much. Let's give out all your social media stuff so that everyone can follow you and
Oh my gosh. What
say hi.
I think I'm Chaubursin, Chaubursin on Twitter and Instagram.
For Christopher.
I am Cleo, Cleo Abram, Abram, and I almost exclusively use Instagram as opposed to Twitter and Facebook. I find that I'm happier in my Instagram world than I am on Twitter.
If you do a social media thing, because I've heard it said, and then I've just now seen it in my own life where I started to realize it, that everybody uses social media, but depending what platform you're on is the mindset of how people interact. Instagram, a lot nicer than Twitter is, and then Snapchat is just too difficult at this point.
I prefer the happy world of Instagram. If anyone wants to come find me there, that's fine. But Twitter, I don't really post very much.
And Joss?
I'm Joss Fong on Twitter and Instagram.
All right, and Lex?
I'm Alex Clark. Just going old school. Just go to alexclark.com and you can
Nice.
find it on there.
'Cause there's a 4 in his name.
TikTok?
Yep. Not on TikTok.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, me neither.
Who had the other spelling?
There's so many of me, you know. There's even a famous YouTuber named Alex Clark. I'm coming for him. We're gonna knock him out.
There's another episode. People who have your name that are doing other things.
Yeah, cyber
Really don't have
squatting.
that problem.
Me neither. I haven't.
You could CGI it. Make a brand new one. Everyone, thank you so much for coming here. Well, look, when you get season 2, come back here. We'd love to talk about, and
Yeah.
I'll probably have more pressing questions to annoy you with and throw more topics in your way. So
Awesome.
thank you so very much
Thanks
for
so
coming.
much,
in.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
We are all good. Not too painful.